the glory of God, and in proud and grateful memory of the men and women of Christ's Church who so unselfishly served their country in World War II, that time may not dim the memory of their sacrifice. This tablet is placed here by the congregation of Christ's Church, Episcopal, in the year of our Lord, 1949. Vakar Rahang Step Lev Step Up So Step Kazo. We connect to the memory. Vakar Sirahang Step Lev Step Up So Step Kazo. We connect to the legacy. Sirahag Sep Lev Sep So Sep Kazo. We connect to the energy of those were, those are, and those are to come. James Lawrence Alexander, William Franklin Alexander, Edmund Mintry Jefferson, John White Arlington III, James Carlisle Attaway, John Hugh P. Evant, Richard Gray Evant, Harry Minshall Baldinger, Jack Watson Barnett, John McGrady Barnwell Jr., William Hazard Barnwell II, Thomas Allen Barkburn, Denise Mays Beatty, Fontaine Fox Beatty Jr., Samuel Marshall Beatty Jr., Keith Laguerre Beckwith, Horace Bramham Bibb Jr., Nancy Marshall Bibb, William Wyatt Bibb, Humphrey Graves Black, Bernard Hode Blythe, Edgeworth Montague Blythe Jr., Lauriston Arden Blythe, Middledge Lipscomb Bunham, William Rion Bonham, Sylvanus Hale Bowen Jr., James Patrick Boynton, Francis Winslow Poe Browley, Marion Porter Browley, Marion Porter Browley Jr., Bruce Sidney Jr., Carl Edward Buck, William Gilmore Sims, Jackson Wilbur Burnett Jr., James Drayton Holmes Jr., Barbara Quigley Cameron, William Robert Cameron, Carol Ashmore Campbell, Theodore Earl Campbell, Hambleton Baxter Carpenter, Richard Emsley Carpenter, Walter Brown Carpenter, William Lee Carpenter, Archie Lee Chandler, Arthur Seabrook Chandler, William Eugene Chandler Jr., Gerard Schleicher Chapin, Elliot Padgett Cleveland, James Harvey Cleveland Jr., James Norwood Cleveland Jr., there's a star next to that, John Baker Cleveland, Jack Walsh Cole, Lawrence Levering Crane, Frank Blair Creighton, Peter Franklin Curtin Jr., and there's a star next to that, Charles Francis Dawes, Joe Ellen Dixon, Isaac Langston Dunkley Jr., Oliver Perry Earl Jr., Thomas Bayliss Earl, there's a star next to that, Wilton Ainsworth Earl Jr., David Chenoweth Ivoire, Lyman Harvey Eddy, Wilbur Emery Burnett Ellis, William Burwell Ellis III, Charles Burnley Fawcett, David George Ferguson, Thomas Cecil Ferguson, Yancey Sherrard Gilkerson Jr., Roger Lowell Gill, Payne Perry Glover Jr., Wilson Glover II, there's a star next to that, Robert Emmett Godfrey, John Woodfin Grady Jr., James Cranson Gray, Dudley Greer, James Lanier Griffin Jr., Halcott Towns Hayden, Eugene Willard Hammond Jr., Edwin Calhoun Haskell Jr., Chester Eppert Hatch Jr., John Beard Henry, Robert Carter Henry, Allen Towns Hodges, Gertrude Ryan Holmes, Isaac Payne Houston, Robert Emmett Houston Jr., Norman Victor Huey Jr., Thomas Francis Higuinin, Walter Calhoun Humphreys Jr., Ellen Jeffrey Hyatt, William J. Iselin, Ben Hill Jackson, Michael Graham, William Cabell Jennings Jr., Frank Arthur Jones, Hamilton Chalmers Jones Jr., Edward Leland Jordan, Bernard Hardin Height, Thomas Wadlington Height, Richard Porter Lang, Justin Edward Langell III, James Bryan Little, Charles William Lively Jr., Whitner Kilpatrick Livingston Jr., William Cherry Livingston, Richard Alvin Logan, Roy Merlin Lynch Jr., star next to that, George Edward Blind Jr., Duncan Rossell Mackenzie, George Maxwell Mackenzie, Malcolm Mackenzie, William Maxwell Jr. Mackenzie, William Maxwell Mackenzie Jr., Charles James Fuller Manley Jr., Thomas Claiborne Margaret, Alfred William Marshall Jr., Alva Graham Mason, Charles Hill McGaffey, Leroy Sprunt McBee, Luther Patrick McBee, star next to that, Luther Martin McBee III, Bardry McBee Jr., William DeBohun McBee, William Gordon McCabe Jr., Arthur Crosswell McCall, Bernard L. Spire McCaskill Jr., Charles Bruce Caskill, Anthony Foster McKissick III, Philip Kinsey McKnight, Ralph Harrison McPherson, Otis Prentice Mills Jr., Foss Nicholson Jr., Lawrence Chisholm Nicholson, John Wilkins Jr., John Wilkins Norwood Jr., Albert Drain Oliphant, William Gilmore Sims Oliphant, Henry Hammett Orr, Henry Hammett Orr Jr., Parker Thomas, Fool, Lucien Norwood Pole, Gary Luites Prevost, James McMillan Rab Jr., Joseph Donald Randolph, John Manning Reeves, Yes Manning Richardson Jr., Francis Miller Richardson, Albert Memory Rickman Jr., James George Rickus, Harvey McCoy Rose, Samuel Coragros Rawell, Thomas Nullis Rowell, Dennis Leo Ryan Jr., Earl Wheaton Sargent, Robert Goodrich Sargent, Richard W. Shinnick, Frederick Eugene Schroeder, Lawrence Donald Scherer Jr., Edward Leon Smith, Eugene Bates Smith Jr., Franklin Smith Jr., Height, Hayne Smith, Louis Cromer Smith, Robert Newton Smith Jr., William Buck Sparkman, Charles Sterling, Bruce Walton Stroke, Francis Ellison Stroke, Joseph Edward Sturdivant, John Hayward Halley, James Elliott Thaxton, Richard King Thaxton, that has a star next to it, that second Thaxton there. Wheeler McIntosh Thaxton, Philip Joseph Von Weller, Gordon Beverly Moore Walker, Hugh Vincent Walker Jr., Harry Alonzo Ward, Eugene Warren Ware Jr., Holt Fairfield Butt Watts, Edison Godfrey Webster Jr., William Jackson Wellborn, John Irving Westervelt II, Charles Goodwin Whitmore, James Martin Whitmore, Charles Goodwin Whitmire, James Martin Whitmire Jr., Elizabeth Cleveland Williams, Sumner McBee Williams Jr., Charles Coleridge Withington Jr., John Marshall Withington, Arthur Eugene Workman. Now, I've said everything right, I think. Of course, I can go back and edit some of this out, but it's not a usually first, last, middle, in between, and the title. Not the everything being the last, that makes sense, but the order makes sense. It's just stumbles me up a bit because some of them are juniors, some of them are seniors, and some of them are thirds. But that's the last thing you say. But then that rest of it is the first thing you say that's next to it. And World War II was a war where it really seemed, more than any of these three, that America was on the side of good. And in the outer sense, that's, makes a lot of sense. But we do know that with all three of these wars that we have plaques here for, and including the Revolutionary War, by the way, which there's not a plaque for, but there is, at least on that eastern set of blogs, somebody who was part of that period, if not multiple people. I just remember one at the moment. Some of the same people made money on both sides of the war, supported people on both sides, sold weapons and some other stuff on both sides. So things aren't as cut and dry. But we just have to act on what we have, or not act on what we have, and use our intentions. So the intentions is what these people would be judged for, and as you can see there, much, if not all, of these people intended to be unselfish in what they were doing. That they were protecting their country. That they were protecting, other people, that sort of stuff. And so a sense of kindred honor is to be respected.